23,000 men. One day, one creek, one crumpled cigar wrapper that changed everything. Welcome to Antietam. Picture this. It's September 1862, the American Civil War. It's just 13 months old, but man, has it been brutal. The Union, frankly, hasn't managed a decisive win in the East. Not yet, anyway. But Robert E. Lee, he's riding high on a string of victories. He figures the best defense is a good offense, right? So, he marches his Army of Northern Virginia straight into Maryland, deep into Union territory. His big, audacious goal? Win a battle on Northern soil, maybe even grab Baltimore or Harrisburg, and finally, pressure Britain and France to recognize the Confederacy as a legitimate nation. Just one lost set of orders and one notoriously cautious Union general stand in his way. What happens next isn't just a battle. It rewrites the entire purpose of the war in a single sunrise to sunset slaughter. Lee, ever the bold strategist, splits his 40,000-man army the moment they cross the Potomac. He sends Stonewall Jackson, his trusted right hand, to capture the vital Union arsenal at Harper's Ferry, while Lee himself camps near Sharpsburg, a quiet one-street town nestled between endless cornfields and a rather sleepy creek called Antietam. It's a move that's audacious, maybe even downright reckless, but Lee is gambling. He's betting that George McClellan nicknamed the young Napoleon, though perhaps more for his ego than his speed will move slowly enough to let him recombine his forces. And McClellan does move slowly, but, as fate would have it, not quite slowly enough for Lee's comfort. On September 13th, just days before the battle, 2 Union soldiers, bivouacked in a quiet meadow, stumble upon something incredible. 3 cigars wrapped in a piece of paper. Not just any paper, though. It's special orders, 191, Lee's entire battle plan, outlining every troop movement, every objective. Can you imagine? By nightfall, McClellan is actually holding Lee's complete strategy in his hands. Knowing Lee has divided his force and the closest Confederate wing is only 8 miles away, if McClellan had attacked at dawn with this intel, he could have smashed the rebels in detail, probably ending the war in a week. He famously boasts, "Here is a paper with which I can whip Bobby Lee." But then, he hesitates. He spends the next 18 agonizing hours shuffling corps, checking supply wagons, and fretting over phantom enemy numbers that he always inflated. Those 18 hours, those precious wasted hours, give Lee just enough time to recall Jackson. When the sun finally rises on September 17th, both armies are still in Maryland, poised for what will become the bloodiest single day in American history. The stage is set, the die is cast, and there's no turning back. At precisely 5:30 a.m., the Union artillery on the east bank of Antietam Creek roars to life, unleashing a furious 30-minute bombardment. Shells arc gracefully over the morning mist, then crash down into David Miller's 30-acre cornfield, shredding stalks and, tragically, men alike. They make it halfway across the field, pushing through the shattered corn before a gray line, seemingly from nowhere, erupts from the far side. The firing that follows is so rapid, so intense, the smoke coils above the corn like an angry, suffocating thundercloud. Men load and fire until the barrels of their muskets burn their hands. Then, in a horrifying testament to the desperation, they swap their smoking weapons with the dead. Private David Thompson of the 9th New York later writes, with chilling clarity, that the air seems full of leaden hail. The cornstalks are sliced so low by the relentless torrent of bullets that the field looks as though it's been expertly mown by some unseen, monstrous reaper. By 7 o'clock, just an hour and a half into the fight, the struggle for the cornfield has sucked in brigade after brigade, Union and Confederate, into its swirling vortex of death. The 1st Texas, for instance, loses 8 color bearers in a mere 10 minutes. The 12th Massachusetts starts the morning with 334 brave men. By 8 o'clock, a staggering 224 are down, dead, or wounded. It's an unimaginable toll. Just when Union troops manage to gain a fragile toehold, John Bell Hood's division, fresh from breakfast and surprisingly well-fed, arrives, counterattacks with ferocity, and drives them back, reeling through the East Woods. Hooker himself is stunned. Quite literally, an artillery shell explodes nearby, knocking him senseless sand. He's forced to ride to the rear. The cornfield, that seemingly innocuous patch of farmland, changes hands a horrifying 15 times before the sun is even fully up. When the firing finally lulls, the stalks are slick not just with dew, but with blood. And neither side can truly claim the ground. It's a stalemate written in crimson, while the cornfield churns with unspeakable violence. The center of Lee's line lies along an old farm road, a natural trench worn waist-deep by generations of wagons and countless rains. Confederates, ever resourceful, stack fence rails along the bank, creating makeshift breastworks, and wait. At 9:30 a.m., 2 Union corps, under the command of Generals French and Richardson, slam into them with desperate force. The sunken road, already a natural defile, instantly transforms into a gutter of fire. Attackers fall in windrows wave after wave, yet they keep coming, driven by sheer numbers and grim determination. For 3 agonizing hours, the fight is point-blank, brutal, and intimate. Men shoot at enemy faces just 10 yards away, so close they can see the fear, the determination, the horror. When their powder fouls or their muskets jam, they club each other with the heavy butts of their rifles. The 61st New York and 64th New York, pushing through the chaos, managed to crest the ridge, pouring volleys down the entire length of the lane. A Confederate sergeant, seeing the desperate situation, yells, "They are flanking us," but his warning is utterly lost in the deafening uproar of battle. Suddenly, miraculously, the gray line cracks. Hundreds of Confederate soldiers, broken by the sustained fire and the sheer pressure, throw down their rifles and sprint for the rear, seeking any escape from the inferno. Union soldiers, seizing the moment, leap into the road, firing after the fleeing rebels. The lane, already a scene of unimaginable carnage, becomes so choked with the dead and dying that survivors literally use bodies as breastworks, sheltering behind the fallen. By 1 o'clock, the road is no longer a road. It's a red ditch, a gruesome testament to the day's butchery. Newspapers will soon, and rightly, call it Bloody Lane. Lee's center is pierced. A critical breakthrough, yet McClellan, with powerful reserves still uncommitted, refuses to press the advantage. He telegraphs Washington, claiming the enemy is strongly reinforced, a phantom threat he conjured, and the Union surge stalls, losing its momentum. The Confederate army, dazed but remarkably unbroken, reforms on the ridge beyond, clinging to survival. One more decisive push might have ended the invasion, ended the war right there. Instead, the guns fall quiet for an hour of strange, ghastly calm, a terrifying pause in the storm. South of town, the battle's final, desperate act begins at a seemingly insignificant 12-foot-wide stone bridge spanning Antietam Creek. On the far side, just 400 Georgia sharpshooters, dug in amongst the bluffs and behind boulders, hold the strategic high ground. Above them, the Confederate flag defiantly flies, almost taunting the Union, the Ninth Corps, commanded by the notoriously slow General Ambrose Burnside, who are massed on the opposite bank. At 10 a.m., Burnside finally receives his orders: carry the bridge and press on the right. But instead of immediate action, he spends 3 frustrating hours getting artillery into position and detailing the 11th Connecticut to skirmish. Meanwhile, the Georgia sharpshooters, with chilling precision, coolly pick off anyone who dares show so much as a cap. Their fire is devastatingly effective, turning the approach to the bridge into a death trap. At 1 p.m., after hours of delay, the 2nd Maryland and 6th New Hampshire finally charged downslope towards the bridge. Half never even reached the span, cut down by the relentless fire. Colonel James McCrae of the 5th North Carolina, witnessing the slaughter from the Confederate side, writes with grim satisfaction, "We could not help hitting them." A second wave, led by the determined 51st New York and 51st Pennsylvania, finally storms across, their colors proudly touching the coping stones of the bridge. The Georgians, low on ammunition and fearing encirclement, are finally forced to withdraw, their valiant stand having cost the Union dearly, Burnside's men having finally secured the bridge and climbed the bluff, are met with a devastating surprise, fresh. Confederate divisions arriving from Harper's Ferry, it's A.P. Hill's legendary foot cavalry, who, oft an incredible forced march, have covered 17 miles since dawn to arrive just in the nick of time. Their furious counterattack drives the exhausted Federals back toward the very bridge they had just fought so hard to take. Shadows lengthen across the field. Lee still holds the ridge. But he has used his last reserve, every single man. Both armies stand on the same blood-soaked ground they held at dawn, only now the grass is red and the creek, the quiet Antietam, runs pink with the day's grim harvest. As the sun dips below the horizon, cannon fire sputters out like dying coals, leaving an eerie silence punctuated only by the sounds of agony. Pickets creep forward into the twilight, desperately searching, dragging friends from the fields where they fell. The wounded cry out, their voices raw and fading, until silence finally claims them. A Pennsylvania private, shaken to his core, writes home, the whole earth seemed to groan. Across 12 square miles, a landscape utterly devastated. Every fence is splintered, every stalk of corn trampled into the mud, every leaf shot away. It's a scene of utter desolation. The Army of Northern Virginia clings to the ridge, exhausted but unbroken. But Lee, knowing his position is untenable, orders a retreat after dark. By dawn on the 18th, the last Confederate wagons are recrossing the Potomac, slipping back into the relative safety of Virginia. McClellan, in a characteristic move, telegraphs Washington claiming a complete victory, yet he does not pursue. His army, though bloodied, still outnumbers Lee 2-1 and could, in theory, have finished the campaign, perhaps even the war. Instead, he stays on the field for 4 long days, burying the dead and re-equipping, allowing Lee's battered army to escape. The butcher's bill is staggering. Union casualties totaled 12,400 men. Confederate, 10,700. Together, the combined toll is 23,000 more dead and wounded in one single day than America lost in the Revolution. The War of 1812 and the Mexican War combined asterisk. It's a number that defies comprehension. 2 days later, a pioneering photographer named Alexander Gardner arrives, capturing 70 haunting images of the aftermath. For the very first time, civilians in New York and London see bloated bodies in ditches, the raw, brutal reality of war laid bare. They realize, with a chilling clarity, that war is no longer a romanticized notion, but a grotesque, dehumanizing horror. The Battle of Antietam ends not with cheers of victory, but with the creak of wagons, the desperate sobs of searchers looking for brothers, fathers, and sons among the corn. If this story, this stark reality of Antietam, hits you the way it hits me every time I read those casualty lists, please take a second to tap like. It helps the algorithm show this to more history buffs, more people who need to remember. While you're at it, why not subscribe? There's plenty more where this came from. And if you're ever thinking of walking this hallowed ground yourself, drop Antietam in the comments. My favorite self-guided tour. Antietam, technically speaking, is a tactical Drawley escapes. McClellan fails to destroy him, but strategically, it's a Union victory, and one big enough for Abraham Lincoln to seize the moment. Just 5 days later, the president issues the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation, telling his cabinet, with a profound sense of destiny, God has decided this question in favor of the slaves. The war's aim shifts dramatically, powerfully, from simply preserving the Union to pursuing both Union and freedom. Suddenly, Britain and France, who had been eyeing Confederate cotton but absolutely abhorred slavery, quietly shelved their plans to recognize the Confederacy. It was a diplomatic masterstroke, born from the blood-soaked fields of Maryland. McClellan, for all his caution and missed opportunities, is finally relieved of command in November. Lee, ever the tenacious warrior, fights on for another 2.5 grueling years. Yet, after Antietam, the Confederacy never again mounts a major invasion of the North. The tide, slowly but surely, has turned. Every September, if you visit Shopsburg, locals still find bullets in the freshly plowed fields, echoes of that terrible day. The corn grows tall and green, just as it did then, save for a few rows left uncut near the visitor center, stalks swaying like quiet sentries over the infamous sunken road. Stand there at dawn, and you can almost hear the ghostly drums, feel the weight of history. The battle itself may have lasted one sunrise, but its echoes, its profound and lasting impact, shaped everything that followed in America's long, arduous march toward a new birth of freedom.